Hello, everyone from the State of Affairs podcast. I have got with me today a very great scholar and doctor in her own respect, a very reputed person with me, a clean researcher on the topic of Sri Lanka. And if we downline talk about it, it's Sri Lanka-India relations specifically. But then Sri Lanka is in the news for some other reasons also. So I have decided to actually discuss with my panelist about the current state of affairs that's prevailing in the Sri Lankan state. I would like to introduce her. She is Dr. Gulbin Sultana. She is a research associate at the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense and Security Analysis. Uh, I would like to welcome you, ma'am, on this podcast. Thank you so much that you have joined us on the short notice, though it's a backlog session since a month. I've been trying to actually invite you. Given your slammed schedule, you couldn't make it, but yesterday I got a clarification that you'll be joining us on this very important issue. Welcome on the State of Affairs podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for having me here.
And there is a lot of talk about Sri Lankan economic crisis, and there must be different reasons for it. One of the reasons is that it's not only the infrastructure development that has to be in place in order to actually trigger your economic growth. There is more thing that you have to evolve dynamically, and growth and infrastructure development must go hand in hand. So only an investment into the infrastructure doesn't yield the growth rate simultaneously. If we talk about the statistics or the science involved in it, you just draw a landscape of what's actually happening on the ground in Sri Lanka. Over to you.
As you mentioned, right now, Sri Lanka is going through a severe economic crisis. I think in its history, I mean, since 1948 when Sri Lanka got independence. Since then, I think this kind of crisis is happening for the first time. Though in the past also there were economic issues and all, but the way things are going on right now, it's, I think, unprecedented. So the economic crisis actually is basically because of there is a depletion in foreign reserves. In Sri Lanka economy is dependent, I mean, import dependent economy. So for import, they have to, for everything, be essential items like food, fuel, medicines, for everything, they have to depend on import. And also because of their export, many of the things they need to, to manufacture there in Sri Lanka, they have to import many of the raw materials. So import or dependent economy Sri Lanka is. But the problem is because of this depletion in foreign reserves, the country is facing it difficult to make the payment for import. So many of the products, they are coming and they are stuck at the Colombo port, but consignments cannot be cleared because of the shortages of dollars in Sri Lanka. In November 2021, the foreign reserve was just enough for, more than, not even enough for 2 months imports. It was just slightly more than 1 month's import. In December, there was a slight increase, but since December onwards, I think it stuck at $2.31 billion, which is, I think, adequate only for 2 months of imports. So as a result, the country is finding it very difficult to import the essential items, and there is a severe shortages of everything, as I mentioned, food, fuel, medicines, everything. The hospitals, they are now in the news that the hospitals, they are finding it difficult to, conduct the surgeries and all because of the lack of medicines and other equipments they require for surgery and all. There is a severe power shortages because fuel they need to import, and there's a shortages of fuel, and power plants are not able to function because of the lack of fuel. So there is a daily from 6 to 9 hours daily power cuts the country is facing, and when there is a power cut, it affects all the industries, manufacturing industries. It also affects the tourism sector. Lack of fuel also affects the transportation and everything. So people from all strata of society, they are facing the burden of this economic crisis. So right now, everybody is on the street. They are protesting now. They have realized that the current government is not able to handle the situation, the crisis, economic crisis properly. So people are on the street, and they are demanding for resignation of the President Gotabaya Raj, of the president and his government. And that people's protest that started on 3rd April. Before that, what government did, the government was aware that this kind of protest is coming up. So they, president declared emergency on 1st April, but ultimately, I mean, nobody could, I mean, still, despite the emergency rule, he could not control the people. People defying the curfew and emergency rules, people came out in large numbers on the street, and they're protesting, they're chanting slogans. In the social media, they have created page like Go Gota Home. All these things are happening, and in the under this kind of an political protest. I mean, there are two kinds of protests there in Sri Lanka right now. One is by the opposition political parties. Not only opposition political parties, in fact, there are some of the coalition partners of this government. They have also decided to, take a stand against the government. They have decided to withdraw their support to the government, and they are sitting independently in the parliament. So on the one hand, they are having their own protest. Political parties, they are protesting against this government for bringing out some kind of effective measures and policies. On the other hand, common people who are not led by any political parties or political leaders, they have come out. Some of them are professionals, then artists, lawyers, from medical health professionals, teachers, even from the Christian community, like the cardinals, nuns. Everybody are on the street, and they are protesting against the government for a better, I mean, their view is that only a change of a government is not enough. They want somebody who can be accountable and who can respect the justice. So this kind of protest is going on, and under the people, this kind of pressure, entire cabinet ministry has resigned except Prime Minister. All the ministers have resigned on 3rd April, and 4th April, to just run the country, government president has appointed 4 members, 4 cabinet members, including finance minister. But then finance minister on 5th April, yesterday, he also resigned. Now the country doesn't have any finance minister when country is in dire economic situation, and parliament is in session. So political parties they are arguing, they are debating what can be the solution. Actually, not even they are talking about the solution, they are debating this, this current situation. Now, from government side, they are asking that since the entire cabinet has resigned, they are asking all the parties to come together and form the government, an interim government or caretaker government, so that they can have some kind of solution. They can come out with some political measures. But all the opposition parties, as I mentioned before, that some of the coalition partners, there are 11 parties. They actually, before 3rd April, they were asking about the formation of an interim government. But even now, they have said that they also don't want to be part of that interim government. So none of the opposition political parties who are not with the government, they are not ready to participate in this interim government. Everybody is, particularly the people who are on the street, their demand is that resignation of president and his entire government. Now, president has clearly mentioned, and president's office also clearly told parliament that president is not going to step down at this point of time. And the ruling SLPP, the ruling party, ruling coalition, they have lost 2/3 majority in the parliament. There were actually total out of 225 parliament MPs, the ruling parties, they were having 154 seats. But after the coalition partners, they have withdrawn their support. Now the number in the ruling party is around they are holding 114 seats in the parliament, which is just one more than the simple majority, that is For simple majority, they require 113 seats. So the ruling party, they are having a simple majority, enjoying the simple majority in the parliament, but it may change anytime, we don't know. And president has said, okay, he's not going to step down, but he's ready to hand over government to anybody who can prove this 113, the simple majority. But other political parties, I think they are not ready to this kind of situation. In fact, demand from the opposition parties is the abolition of executive presidency. In Sri Lanka, the president, it's an executive presidential system, and the president holds a very, lots of power, particularly after Gotabaya Rajapaksa came to power in 2019. And the SLPP came into power in 2020 after the parliamentary election. They brought 20th amendment in the constitution, by which they made certain changes in the constitutional provisions and made the president's power, they provided more power to the president. Now president has lots of power. So now the opposition parties, they are talking about that abolition, this executive presidency should be abolished. Now this demand for abolition of executive presidency, it has been there for quite some time. It's not a new demand. It has been there even before 2015 presidential election. That demand was there. There was split in the ruling in the coalition ruling party during that time, 2014. Because of that, some of the ruling coalition partners that time, they were asking for abolition of executive presidency, but that time Mahinda Rajapaksa was the president. He clearly refused to, abolish this executive presidency. So on this point, I think there was a split in the coalition partners. In 2019, again, this issue came up when the national unity government came into power, but then in the parliament, they could not abolish the executive presidency, because once somebody becomes president, they don't actually want that to, abolish this executive presidency. But then the national unity government, they brought some 2019, they brought 19th amendment, which actually reduced some of the powers of the president. Though it was not a perfect amendment, still there were problems with that 19th amendment, but to a large extent, some of the powers of president were reduced. But then after Gotabaya Rajapaksa brought the 20th amendment, and all the powers are now concentrated to the presidency. So this kind of demands are being there. So opposition are now saying that instead of forming interim government, within a week, a bill should be brought into the parliament, and this executive presidency should be abolished. So this kind of political debates are going on. People are on the street. They are demanding for the resignation. So it's totally all chaos, and it's actually a major problem, because already country is having economic issues. So now when there is no finance minister, even the finance secretary has also resigned, central bank governor has also resigned. There's no governor right now in the central Sri Lanka central bank. So until unless this political problems, there is some solution of the political problems, economy will further get deteriorated. And as long as this economic problem will be there, I think it will also, the political problem will also be continued, because people will demand for a better system. So this is the situation right now in Sri Lanka.
Thank you for such an elaborate, analysis of the entire problem. But I don't just understand one thing, is that most of the countries are import-driven economies, right? Sri Lanka has a strategic importance in the Indian Ocean region, given its strategic location. What actually went wrong with the economy? Leave aside the politics, it can result and it can stem from the economic chaos. If there's a chaos in Sri Lanka, it purely is economic collapse of the system. What actually went wrong in Sri Lanka? Earlier, it used to be a tourist hub. Just a year or two back, it have had a historic records were broken by the influx of the tourists, and it was a booming tourism industry. And rest, it used to import things, even eatables from the foreign countries. But what actually went wrong at the economic level? Is it that there is an amount of corruption that has actually come into place, or there is some other thing, some other externality that we can say that has led to this economic collapse first, and then political anarchy as the consequent result of this? What actually went wrong at the economic level? I just want to understand that thing.
See, when we talk about economy, I would say that there is an immediate cause to this crisis, and there's some kind of problem which are inherent in Sri Lankan economy, and those problems they are there since 1950s onwards. Those problems are continuing, but because of some of the immediate issues right now, particularly the pandemic, then there was a bomb blast in 2019. So I think all these factors have together aggravated the situation. So let me talk about this problem, what the inherent problem Sri Lankan economy has. Now, Sri Lanka, as I mentioned, the import dependent economy, as you rightly mentioned, that there are several other countries also who are totally dependent on import. That's the right observation. But problem with Sri Lanka is that there, since 1950 onwards, it has always been observed that their income from export is always less than the amount they have to pay for the import. So there is always a deficit, trade deficit is always there. So there's a major problem, and that has been continuing since then. So whatever amount they mark, even if you see the figures and all, that you will find some years maybe export has increased, but then in the whatever money they earn from export, it they have to, it goes away to pay the import bill. So trade deficit will always be there. That is one point that has been continuing, and none of the governments actually since then, they have done enough to see how they can increase this their export. This how they can balance this trade deficit. So that was an inherent problem in Sri Lankan economy. And then many people are arguing then when income is not much, Sri Lanka is following this welfare, state system. So a huge amount is also spent on that. So accordingly, the income is not much. So these are the some of the inherent problems. So if they have to follow this welfare system, then they need to earn also accordingly. But not much focus has been given on this earning part, like how to increase this revenue and all.
One way of diversifying the economy and in order to increase the income levels of the people was to actually shift from inorganic farming to the organic farming, and it was just recently that.
I'm coming to that. That's a totally different thing.
Mhm.
So that is the inherent problem in Sri Lankan economy. But what happened, as I mentioned, then the war that definitely affected the Sri Lankan economy. But then post-war period, from 2010 to 2014 period, if we see, particularly 2010 to 2013, there was a boom in Sri Lankan economy. The growth was around 8%. 7.8%. I think that is many people argue that it happens after war because you get lots of aids and assistance from other countries. So the growth and economy, there's economic boom you can see after any kind of war in many countries. So that happened. But during that time, 2010 to 2014 period, government that time they also focused on development. They thought like the infrastructure development will be very important in the post-war period, which will benefit Sri Lanka economically. To fulfill that kind of vision, Sri Lanka has taken huge amount of loan. But unfortunately, the loans they have taken for this infrastructure development, they could not provide as much profit as it was expected. For example, there are several large projects like, port, airports. For these projects, they have taken money, and it was expected whatever profit will be earned from those projects, that will be used to repay the loans. But unfortunately, when those projects were, infrastructures started functioning, they could not produce those kind of, they were in loss. Those were economically not viable. As a result, they did not have enough money right now, because when some of the projects got completed in 2015-16, so they, after you get 3-4 years grace period, and after that you have to start repay the loans. So this is the time when many of the Sri Lankan government has to repay many of the loans. Not only they have loans taken from bilateral institutions, like bilateral partners like China, Japan, India, but they have also taken loans in the form of sovereign bonds from multilateral institutes, so World Bank, ADB, IMF. So now that time has come to repay the loan. It's actually started from 2017-18 onwards. They have to, every year government has to repay some kind of amount, but from 2017-18 or 19 onwards, the amount, the kind of amount they have to repay, it's huge. For example, July 2021 to 2000, now 2022, the amount is, in billions, more than $1 billion. They have already paid a huge amount in January this year. Again, in July, they have to pay a huge $1 billion to repay the sovereign bond. Other than, this is just one aspect of the payment they have to make this year. In some of the assessment, I think they have to make, they need $5 to $7 billion to repay, only for repaying the debts this year alone. So now when this kind of burden is there, then came there was Star Sunday attack in 2019. That affected tourism for short period, like for some time. The attack happened in April, and from April to, I think, December, the tourism sector got affected. But when December 2019 onwards, tourism just kind of, started taking off. Then COVID came from March 2020 onwards. The entire country is in lockdown. Like Maldives, they immediately reopened the tourism sector. I think by July to 2020, they resumed their tourism sector, but Sri Lanka could not do it because they did not reopen. So now the tourism sector, there was no income at all from tourism sector. Now, if you see the revenue that comes to Sri Lankan economy, particularly the foreign exchange that comes to Sri Lankan economy, there are 3 sectors. That is tourism, then remittances. Huge amount of remittances comes, like people who goes abroad and they work there, so they send remittances. So that is another sector, and then export. Now, because of the COVID, I think all 3 sectors, they got affected severely. And so on the one hand, they were not earning much. On the other, the debt repayment was due. They have to make the debt repayment. Now, one of the solution, many of the experts and even the opposition parties, they were saying that, why don't you, delay the repayment of the debt? Since you don't have the money, you can delay the repayment of the debt or restructure the debt. You can request. It can be possible. And if you see the financial rating agencies like Fitch rating agencies and all, they have downgraded, they gave a negative rating to Sri Lanka in 2020 onwards, because they were, anticipating this kind of economic situation, and they were saying that Sri Lanka may get, have this debt burden, and they may default in repaying the debt. But Sri Lankan government wanted to prove that because in its entire history, they have never defaulted to repay the loan. They have always repaid the loans. So they wanted to prove this financial agency is strong, and they wanted to, they did not want to restructure the debt repayment. So they've followed whatever the time period they were given to repay the debt. So I think that was a major problem, because you don't have money. As I mentioned, in in November 2021, there was only $1.7 billion in the foreign reserves. Then in January, Sri Lanka had to make a $500 million just for to repay the debt. Okay, but then out of other than $500 million, government also needs to pay for their daily import, right? Because they are depending on import of fuel, food, everything. So they have to make payment for that also. So they could have just delayed this debt repayment in January, but then government did not do that. So I think that is another major problem. And other than that, as you mentioned about this chemical organic farming, I mean, organic farming, this sounds very good because it's, climate, when you talk about climate change and all this organic farming, it's a good thing. But then you have to understand the Sri Lanka, they have been using this chemical fertilizer for long. The soil is used to that chemical fertilizer. So suddenly, if you stop using chemical fertilizer and provide the organic fertilizer, there will be technical issues. I mean, agricultural production will get affected. That is one problem. So that is why when President introduced this, the imposed ban on chemical fertilizer, farmers were on the street. Even the agriculturalists, the scientists, they were on the street because they anticipated that this kind of ban overnight will affect the agricultural production. That is one point. Second point was that he banned the import of chemical fertilizer, but Sri Lanka doesn't have adequate organic fertilizer for the farmers, right? So where from they will get it? So there was not enough fertilizer for the farmers to use for their, when harvest season came. One of the harvest season starts in October. So when many farmers, they did not have any kind of fertilizer to use because chemical fertilizer was banned. There was not adequate organic fertilizer available, and Sri Lanka doesn't manufacture so much in large quantity, right? So that was another problem. So that affected agricultural production. Third problem came because there was crisis. So Sri Lankan government imported from China chemical fertilizer. But there was some technical, commercial issues between the importer and exporter. And ultimately, Sri Lanka had to pay a huge amount as compensation to the Chinese company. Because Chinese company, I think they blackmailed even the Chinese ambassador in Sri Lanka. He also said that, no, you have to pay this kind of huge amount. You cannot cancel the consignment because there was some kind of issues with the consignment. They were importing the fertilizer, organic fertilizer. So when they canceled, Sri Lanka canceled it, they had to pay a huge amount. So all these factors, I think, together impacted Sri Lankan economy, and the way government, of course, other than this corruption issue, misgovernance, all this factor also definitely impacted the Sri Lankan economy. And government, there was a demand, there's a call for proper plan. It was expected that when the budget was prepared, maybe there will be some kind of plan to how to overcome this crisis situation. But government did not come out any long-term effective policies. They were following on short-term immediate problems. I mean, they're completely relying on the bilateral partners like India, China, or any other. Even from Bangladesh also they took assistance. So from anybody who can provide some kind of financial assistance, and they thought that the assistance they're getting from the bilateral partners, they can resolve the problem. That was another issue. Then government was totally against, not only Sri Lankan government, but even the former governor of Central Bank of Sri Lanka, who resigned yesterday. He was also totally against approaching IMF to deal with this economic crisis situation. Now within Sri Lanka, there is views are divided on this IMF. A section says that this is the only option, the country should go to IMF, because even if that will come in the form of loan, but there will be some, it will always be better than going to individual countries for assistance. But there is another section within Sri Lanka who believe that Sri Lanka has been taking loan for years now. I think 17 or 18 times Sri Lanka has already taken assistance from IMF, but when IMF provides loans, lots of conditionalities come and it affect negatively on Sri Lankan economy. So, so many people are opposed it. So government actually governments follow some kind of populist measure also. Like when government came into power in 2020, there was a deduction in tax cut and all those things. So populist measures they've taken, but it's good to take populist measure, but then without looking at the, I think, repercussions which might have, I think that was not good decision. And also another problem with this government was that for long they were in denial mode. When the problem started, that economy, there was a sign that economy is going to decline from 2020 onwards. But initially government was saying no, there is not major problem. Even I think in January, February, if you see the way Sri Lanka Central Bank of Governor, the way he gives statement and all, it seems there is not a major problem. Some short-term problems, they can be easily easily addressed and all. This kind of statements are made, but ultimately the situation, I think, became uncontrollable.
Dr. Gulbin, there are you have dealt with all the issues, I guess, one by one, that have actually contributed their part to trigger this massive economic anarchy and political chaos. But cutting through this entire thing, I was just one thing is important to my understanding. Reason being that what happened to the projects of the China, say for example in the Hambantota port and its development. One second is that what are its implications for the larger economies that are having bilateral agreements with Sri Lanka, or Sri Lanka is indebted to them. What will happen to them in the long run? Is Sri Lanka going to come out in the short term by if IMF just announces a bailout program? Because India has actually extended its credit line recently. They have signed an agreement with Sri Lanka. What will be its implications for the Sri Lankan economy, and what will be its implications for the economies of the countries that have bilateral relations with Sri Lanka? If you can deal with
First of
this.
all, the China factor, though I did not mention about China, but when I mentioned that a huge amount of loan was taken for unviable projects, I meant mostly because of mostly about the Chinese loans only. Because unviable projects in Sri Lanka, if you see these are like Hambantota International Airport, then Matala International Airport, Hambantota Port, then there is the Lotus Tower, and all this. And there are several other Chinese projects. Then Colombo Financial Center, they are constructing. It's still not operational, but it's constructing. Now, many people are saying whether there will be enough investors. If not many investors come, it will be turned, that International Financial Center will be turned into a ghost city. What happens to Sri Lankan economy then? So I meant the Chinese project only. So as many people are arguing that the economic crisis right now is only because of Chinese debt, I think that is not a fair assessment. The Sri Lankan economic situation today, it's not only because of the Chinese debt. Sri Lanka has taken debt from loans from many other countries and multilateral institutions. But China is also definitely a factor. The problem with the Chinese loans is that the China funded loans are used for those projects which are not economically viable. So they are, kind of liability for Sri Lankan government. So that they are not contributing as much as the amount of loan that was taken. They should have contributed hugely to the Sri Lankan economy, but that they are not doing. So that is a major problem. And another problem with China is the Chinese increase. When we say it's not only the infrastructure projects and all, because the current government, we have seen that they're is also kind of, politically also gradually they are going, getting, intertwined. I mean, kind of, the present government is kind of the ways they celebrated the 100 years of communist parties, 100-year celebration and all those things. So there is definitely a kind of political tilt towards the Chinese also, other than the economic investment. So those factors are there. So so my basic point is that when because China, several smaller countries, they are taking loans from China, and problem with China for long, I think in Sri Lanka, probably when you talk to many Sri Lankans now, you have to see how their perception has changed, or whether they change or not. But even I think 2-3 months back also, most of the Sri Lankans, they believe that Chinese investment, Chinese projects, these are not for any kind of, there is no strategic threat. They are coming for economic, there is some economic interest, they are making economic investment. So there is no strategic threat as it is believed in India and all. But I think, but my point is, China, when they invested, definitely they have done their research properly. If many people say that Hambantota port, it came to India, but India refused, and that is why it has gone to China. Now you have to understand why India refused it, because India found it economically unviable, right? That is why, because now even if that is strategically located, that will be very strategic, that port will be of strategic importance. India does not have that much money to, even if it doesn't provide any profit, to invest. But China doesn't care. If China feels that there is some strategic importance to something, they will invest, because they have that much amount of money. They probably ignore whether the project is economically viable or not. So the recipient countries like Sri Lanka, when there are many other recipient countries, I think they have to learn the lesson, and they have to see why China is investing and how much economically viable those projects are before taking the loans. Because we cannot ask the smaller countries, don't take loans, because they need assistance, and they will approach. Even now, even China, when they have not responded positively on some of the requests Sri Lanka has made for on debt restructuring and all, even after that, I'm sure Sri Lanka will approach China for loans, and to overcome this economic crisis and all. So but then I think now they should learn the lesson, and they probably they should be more careful when they take any kind of loan, that what may be the repercussion. So that is my answer on your Chinese loans and the implications. See, I don't see any immediate solution of the economic problem, because right now it's a very chaotic situation there. They will have to resolve their immediate problem. They'll have to resolve the political problems in, I think, in a week or so, and then economic problem, the short term, of course, definitely they will take loans, probably for IMF or bilateral partners, to whatever debt, and they have to or whatever to pay the import and all. But then they also have to make plans, long-term plans. They will also have to see that how this major revenue earning sector like tourism, remittances, and all these sectors, how they function like the pre-pandemic situation, because now nothing is coming from those sectors, not much revenue is coming. So they need to see how they can go back to pre-pandemic situation. So they need to improve, and for that also I think they have to work a lot, like on tourism sector, and on the export also, remittances also. So but then this sector can function well only when there is some kind of stability in the country. Now, as I mentioned, remittances. Many of this political protest from third onwards, we have seen that many of the Sri Lankan expats who is living abroad, they are not. They have said that they are not going to remit dollars to Sri Lanka, which they have been doing, and which is a big contribution to Sri Lankan economy. Many of experts are saying we want a change in the government. So this is a corrupt government. We are not going to remit, even if the country is in crisis. We are not going to send our money to this corrupt government. So this kind of protest they are also doing abroad. in several countries where there are a large number of Sri Lankan experts living. So, until unless there is some kind of political situation, I mean, they handle it well with a change of government, or I don't know how they do it. Unless there's some political stability, I think all this other revenue earning sector will also not function well, will not perform well. So that has to perform well, and definitely they have to now came out a proper solution. They may have to make a plan, and so I don't see any, resolution of this crisis immediately. It will take some time. But the immediate problem for them is to how to survive, because right now survival has become an issue for them, because there is, in the hospitals there are no equipments to conduct the surgery, no medicine, no food. So how will they survive? So they have to address the immediate problem, and they will have to think about the long-term problem. So that is about the crisis and the implications. Bilateral relations, yes. See, uh, if you see the bilateral assistance, not many countries are coming up. For example, India has come up, and India has agreed to provide whatever assistance whenever Sri Lanka requests. But then beyond a point, India cannot provide all. I mean, Indian assistance alone cannot address Sri Lankan economy, right? Beyond a limit, India also cannot provide monetary assistance. India will try, but then for how long? That is one. Secondly, China assistance, Sri Lanka has been requesting to restructure a debt. They are not doing it because they might have done some kind of calculation, and they have said that it may negatively impact China. Sri Lanka again may not be able to repay the debt and all. So that is why I mean, the countries whoever will provide assistance, they will also they will not just do any kind of charity. They will also see that how much they can provide and how much it can be viable to provide assistance to Sri Lanka, even if it's in the form of loans. So I think every country will look for their own interest and accordingly provide assistance to Sri Lanka.